Welcome to GigaBrain, brought to you by Spell Labs. This is the podcast where we speak to the smartest minds across the DeFi space, exploring the ideas, innovations, and people shaping the future of crypto.
And we are back. Guys, welcome to another episode of the GigaBrain podcast. We are here today with Luke Cannon, a prominent Hyperliquid community member. Luke is one of the most prolific commentators on Hyperliquid growth and innovation, and we're going to dive deep into his journey, his views on Hyperliquid, and what's coming next. And there is many things to cover today. So to kickstart, Luke, thank you for being here. Can you just talk a little bit about yourself, intro, and really say why you become involved in Hyperliquid, and even before, like why you're in crypto and why you love crypto? So feel free.
Yeah. So I think I briefly discovered crypto in 2017. At the time I was in college studying abroad and started playing around with stuff, but then the prices started going down, and so I kind of sold everything and left. And so it wasn't until 2020 that I kind of came back to crypto. I was now graduated, I had some income. And so I started binging a bunch of podcasts and going a lot deeper into crypto. And I think like a lot of people, I followed the trajectory of you start with Bitcoin, then you go deep into Ethereum, and then, this lined up with DeFi and NFT summer. So I, continued down the risk curve to DeFi and NFTs, and the bear market started and didn't leave. So still here. And, I think 2022 was really and 2023, it was really like a year where a lot of people were just airdrop farming. That was kind of the thing to do. And you had just had like a bunch of really great airdrops, like ENS, and Uni and stuff. And so people were like looking to like the next ones like this. And so I started farming a bunch of stuff, including Hyperliquid. But at the time, I don't think many people actually really got the vision. It was like some other perp decks. There wasn't much info about it. The deposits were pretty low. There wasn't really much liquidity. So I think at the time, maybe TVL was under like 20 million or something. And the thing actually that got me to Hyperliquid was their listing of the Friendtech index. So they had a perp at the time that basically tracked like the average price of the top like 20 keys on Friendtech. And I was trading on Friendtech a lot, so I kind of like really deeply understood that ecosystem. And so the Friendtech index on Hyperliquid was a really natural thing for me to want to trade. And so that was my introduction to Hyperliquid. This was, I think, July 2023. And then luckily, I don't think I would be here if not for this, but luckily I had a friend that I also introduced to Hyperliquid around the same time, who got it much more than I did. And so as soon as he got it, then he started to be like, no, this thing you showed me, it's actually much bigger. You got to take this more seriously. And so he started shilling me on Jeff, and I had no clue who Jeff was at the time, right? I was just using the perp decks, no clue about the team. And so this guy basically convinced me to go much harder in like December 2023. And this guy turned out to be someone you may know, Crypto Adair, who popularized the $800 per point vision. And so, it's been awesome seeing his come up throughout the whole Hyperliquid story. And, now here we are today. And Hyperliquid has
maybe we need him on the podcast next. Then like that's good stuff. That's good stuff. No, thank you for that.
Yeah.
And of course, so you get the airdrop, right? So did you hold it or did you sell it? If you can share what happened after the airdrop, that's what people want to know.
So I held all of it and bought more. But yeah, I mean, of course, you can always regret, I should have bought, even more. I should have put more cash in at the time. I wasn't fast enough. It's funny, there was a Twitter Spaces the night before the airdrop. And I'm not usually a Twitter Space guy. I don't go to Twitter Spaces, but I was just like, this is such a big event tonight. I want to go and see what people are saying. So I go to the Twitter Spaces, and everyone is talking about how there's going to be a dip, and we're going to have to like hold through the dip and buy more. Maybe we can buy some at like sub 1 billion. And I was like, oh, okay. I guess maybe I should be like I could be a little bit more patient with buying after TGE. But of course, we all know how that played out. There was no dip. Insta catapulted to $3 and then just basically kept marching up from there. But yeah, so I did hold all the airdrop, bought more. I think I own more hype today than I ever have. And the vision is still clear. So
Wow. Wow, man, that's amazing. That's amazing. That's amazing. So you call yourself a prominent Hyperliquid community member. Like, what does that mean to you, and even to what is your role in the ecosystem as of today?
yeah, well, so there's two parts to this. The first is that specific title that is on my bio actually kind of started as a joke because Infinex, before they launched support for a new chain, they try to get
Hmm.
the CEO of the chain to buy a patron. And of course, Jeff hadn't. Jeff was probably unlikely to, right? You're talking about a team who has not paid for Etherscan or Dune or any of these other kind of
Yeah.
products that every blockchain pays for. Um, and so Kane tweeted at one point, all right, I'm going to need a prominent Hyperliquid community member to step up. And so I was like, okay, fine, I'll do it. I already had like a few patrons, but I bought another one, and I was like, all right, I hope I'm a prominent enough Hyperliquid community member. And I guess it somewhat worked because 2 weeks later they did support Hyper EVM. I think maybe they were waiting to see if someone more prominent would step up, but yeah. But then to the broader point about I think what that entails, I think one of the things that's very special at Hyperliquid is that there's just this like such strong cult and community in the ecosystem. Everyone is holding hype. Everyone's invested in its success. Everyone is trying all the new products and giving feedback. And I think part of this comes from the team being such responsive to that feedback since the early days. So every feature on Hyperliquid has probably been shaped by some community feedback. Every new product that's been built has been built because of hundreds of community members like asking for that product. And so I think that ethos just kind of persists to this day. And so I think that's probably what I do best. I trade on Hyperliquid quite a bit. I try out all the new stuff. I invest in some projects. And I'm happy to talk about it and chill it on Twitter. So
Yeah, I don't know if you know, but we at Swell we are also building a new Hyperliquid projects called Hyperwave. So you should check it out if you haven't yet. So it's growing actually a lot in what almost a month, almost 50 million TVL and growing. And we are also going for TG soon. So it's something that you should look into. It is interesting one that we are building. So I think you will like it too. But anyways,
yeah,
So
actually I have checked. No, sorry. I was going to say I have checked out Hyperwave, and so yeah, big
what do you
fan of
think
what you
about
guys are building.
Perfect. Thanks, man.
So yeah. I haven't. I don't think I've actually used it. I was basically checking it out because I was comparing a bunch of the wrapped HLP products. So I have to admit I need to do a bit more research before I give feedback. But yeah, that's 50 million TVL is impressive. I've been using the wrapped HLP from Hyperlend and Looping Collective a bit. But yeah.
Man, it's really moving. Like we are moving at the rate of about 1 million, sometimes even more than 1 million a day on TVL's growth. So it's pretty good. Very good integrations, very good community. Like the community is key, So like the community is growing a lot, and people are giving a lot of feedback, and that is something that makes us really, really proud. So yeah, but anyway, we are like completely shifting the conversation now. But anyways,
Yeah.
man. So coming back to your Hyperliquid journey, so you tweet a lot about Hyperliquid, like, and what does that really mean to you? Like for you to be a community member and an active really important piece of the board here, the chessboard. Like, what does that mean to you as a person?
Yeah. Well, I think at the end of the day, it's just telling the Hyperliquid story, right? So we all know the Hyperliquid team has no marketing person. They don't spend any money on ads. They don't have a BD person. So it's really up to the community to tell the story. And I think the narrative has also been so obvious for me for Hyperliquid that it's such an easy story to tell. You look at all the metrics like new users, revenue, volume, everything is just up and to the right. And yet there's a bunch of people on crypto Twitter who are still going to keep fading Hyperliquid because Maybe they missed the airdrop. Maybe they sold too soon. Maybe they don't actually. I think a lot of people actually are just scarred by the projects of like 2022 and 2023, right?
Yeah.
All these low float, high FTP launches. People just genuinely, I think, don't believe that there can be a team that actually cares about the community and is not trying to rip them off at every opportunity. But you look at the story of Hyperliquid, you look at what the team has done time and time again, and you just realize that it actually is different. And I think a lot of people just honestly can't imagine things being different. That's how scarred kind of we are as an industry in some ways. So telling that story, I think, is important for me.
Yeah, 100%. And now moving a little bit further on the Hyper EVM and Hypercore subject. So what's your take on the Hyperliquid capturing such a large share on the perps market, and where does it go? Where does it end? What's your opinion there?
I mean, yeah, Hyperliquid has definitely introduced a lot of new people to perps. I think, like, obviously perps are kind of like an addictive instrument. Once you try them, you want to keep trying them. Just, it's so easy to make money. And so, but once you've had your hook, kind of, you keep going. And because because the UX has been so much better than other platforms, they've just captured market share, right? Like, I remember trying Jupiter perps and Avo and Drift and all these platforms. And a lot of them actually did some innovative stuff in the beginning. But I just think Hyperliquid shipped faster. They copied from other products what was working. And so everyone ultimately arrived at Hyperliquid and will continue to. But I think from here on out, right, you're looking at Hyperliquid, which has like 80-90% market share on most days. The growth story has to be more about the expansion of the perps market than about trying to gain market share within perps. Like Hyperliquid, I think right now has pretty much saturated the DEX perps market. So I think the main story right now is continuing to take market share from sexes, and then continuing to expand the pie as maybe perps get legalized in the US, or you get a lot more TradFi participants hooked on perps. I think they are just the superior instrument, and so it's just a matter of time until you see a lot more expansion of perps broadly.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And how do you see Hyperliquid comparing to major sexes, and in terms of execution, liquidity, community? Like, what do you think, it's better or worse?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of these sexes do have some form of community. They wouldn't be here without it. But I'm not personally in those communities, and so it's really hard for me to speak to that, I think. But I just think you look at the difference. You compare Hyperliquid and the sexes, and it becomes pretty obvious. I think there's a couple sexes that still have Hyperliquid beat on liquidity, and
yeah,
that might not go away soon. But I think like long term, that's a trend that's the liquidity spread narrowing basically between the sexes and liquidity is just a trend that's not going to stop. But I mean, Hyperliquid has already surpassed a lot of sexes that people used to consider tier one, or a lot of people do trade on despite not being tier one. So I think for a lot of participants, it already is the best option. And this is just speaking from a UX and liquidity perspective. Then you talk about trust, and I mean, I think the difference is pretty clear. There's this guy on Twitter, White Whale HL, who's one of the top traders on Hyperliquid recently. I think he's maybe top 5 on the leaderboard or something. And he recently has had this issue where MEXC has freed some of his funds. Obviously, MEXC is MEXC. They're going to do what they're going to do. But it's just the fact that this can't happen to you on Hyperliquid. And so, yeah, it's whether it's Bybit or Binance or someone else, Hyperliquid is just always going to have that that edge in terms of trust. And
I think
that's a big factor.
No, 100%. And moving on to the Hyper EVM specifically, like how do you see it as a unique feature compared to other EVM implementations?
Well, I think it's interesting timing, because we just basically came from an era of all of these generalized L1s and L2s launching. And then now I think what we've seen is most of them are kind of like fading away in terms of usage. but the ones that are still being used quite a bit have some sort of like moat or like distribution advantage, right? So like Base, for example, it's always going to get pushed by Coinbase. There's a bunch of things you can do on Base that you can't do elsewhere. And so Base is in a good spot. But you look at Optimism, you look at Arbitrum. These are chains that used to be like the home of DeFi, the home of, Optimism. I think a lot of that activity actually moved to Base, kind of took over that ethos. And so these generalized chains, I think, are just going to keep losing their edge. Hyper EVM, on the other hand, is always going to have this edge of being tightly connected to Hyperliquid. So a chain that's just like one hop away from $5 billion of liquidity, from $30 billion of volume that's happening a day, right? I don't think you're ever gonna like have a chain with systematically like higher DeFi yields than you'll get on Hyper EVM. There's just so much demand that comes from being next to an exchange like that. And so, I mean, there's 100%. more chains that are launching soon, right? You got Monad teasing in a couple months, Mega ETH, bunch of others. So obviously the fight's not over, and there's going to be a bunch of perpetexes on those chains that try to compete with Hyperliquid. But yeah, it's just I think Hyper EVM though is always going to be in a special spot, regardless of performance, just because it's close to Hyperliquid and all the liquidity effects that come from that.
Yeah, no, 100%. And for you, how important is the integration between the order book and the smart contracts here?
Yeah, well, so to be honest, I don't really think we've seen much like proof of concept of that yet, right? I mean, obviously there's a few products that are already using it for, wrapped HLP products or for LSTs, for core writer. But to be honest, I don't think users in particular feel it yet or see it. That being said, I think it is really important to build trustless systems on Hyper EVM that use these products. So there's been some thought about, this LST is a multi-sig, or this protocol is a multi-sig. Now, we've gotten used to multi-sigs across DeFi for all sorts of other stuff. So I'm not sure that's the gotcha that it is, but I do think Core Writer enables something that you can't have on Ethereum mainnet, right? Because there's no perptex with this sort of liquidity on Ethereum mainnet that you can query via a smart contract. So I mean, that being said, there's also some challenges ahead, right? So pre-compiles not being atomic, you have to wait for confirmation, or they might not fill, stuff like that. Like, I think those are definitely challenges for builders, and we'll see how that evolves. But yeah, I definitely think it is interesting. You could build, your automated strategies fully on chain on Hyper EVM, and that's just something we haven't really seen before. And it's also one of those things where I or anyone else have no clue what this will enable, because we've literally never seen this on another chain before.
No, 100%, man. Like, no, thank you for the extensive answer here. And like, in your opinion, how does the dual block architecture with the Hypercore and the Hyper EVM address scalability while maintaining composability? Like, why is that important?
Yeah. Well, this is one of those other things, I guess, where Jeff just kind of like ships something and surprises everyone because it's a little bit different than what people are used to. But so I guess we'll see whether it's like a long-term solution or like how useful it is, I guess. For now, I think it's definitely a great way to enable builders to push out, really large transactions with a bunch of gas, without having to like scale every single block to support the same amount of gas for a transaction. It's also useful, right? If you're a user and you don't care about how long it takes to confirm a transaction, you can, set your wallet to use the large blocks, and, you wait up to like a minute, but you'll be able to go through at a very low gas price later. So I've used that in the past. It depends. Sometimes there's some times when Hyper EVM is pretty congested, and that's probably actually worth doing. But yeah, I mean, I think the easiest way to scale Hyper EVM from here is just to be increasing the gas limit, and that will happen. The team has been very clear that Hyper EVM is kind of in a beta stage right now. They have a high bar for what they ship, but then they ship it, and then they get feedback, and then they improve it. Right? They're not waiting for some, final phase before shipping the chain. And so, yeah, I think there's a lot of people obviously who I think would want them to be a lot faster with increasing the gas limit. But until then, the 2 block system is a different way to get some of the same results.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And looking now a little bit into the future, I know that of course you are very attentive to the market, very attentive to which projects are out there, and from the projects you are following, which ones are your favorites, or you share your favorite dApps, or your projects on Hyper EVM? In general, like what are the ones that you really like and you really follow like on a daily basis?
Yeah, well, it's tough. Obviously there's a lot of projects, and I think a lot of people already know which ones are the top ones. But I continue to be impressed by the Felix team. They're very responsive to users. They're always asking for feedback. They've got private chats opened with like every single one of their top users. Obviously, Kinetic is doing big stuff with LSTs, and I think it's interesting because right now teams are kind of trying to just do everything, because the ecosystem is so new that it's not like anyone has like won the LST market or won the Vaults market. And so you've got Kinetic, which is going to be which is doing LSTs, but they may also launch an HIP3 exchange. Felix as well, they may launch an HIP3 exchange. Hyperbeat in particular, another one of these teams that is kind of just trying to put their fingers into everything right now, right? They've got their partnership with EtherFi. They've got vaults, they've got staking, they've got now a delta neutral token product. They're going to be doing HIP3 as well. So this is kind of part of the ethos of Hyperliquid. You just try everything. It doesn't mean you have to do everything, but it's such like a vast opportunity right now that if you can try something, you might as well experiment with it. And that doesn't mean that you're saying you're going to win or something, but you're going to, try it out. But yeah, so Hyperbeat, I guess, would be another one of those teams then. They're very responsive to feedback. They've just launched their swap aggregator as well, which I really like, Master Swap. But no, there are a bunch of teams. Obviously, I think right now the Hyper EVM also has a bunch of alpha. If you're out there finding these projects first and trying out their latest features,
That's true. That's true. Yeah,
you often get disproportionately rewarded. So yeah.
No, 100%. Yeah. That's very true. And I think you'll be very surprised when you start digging deep into Hyperwave too. So that is the next going to be the next alpha too, 100%. Continuing here, so in terms of there is now also a trend for corporate treasury, to do corporate treasury. So do you think this is a trend that will drive price action? Like, because normally like every week you see a new company saying, well, oh, I'm going to do a micro strategy type of company just to hold hype, or just to do treasury strategies, or just to buy and hold. So what do you think that can happen with these more big players and big type of funds coming in to hype?
Yeah. Well, and we haven't actually gotten a recent hype one in a while. I think lately a lot of the attention has been on, there's a bunch of sold ats coming to market. But so kind of as it is, we have like 3 or 4 of these for hype, right? We've got Sonnet, we've got Hyperion, we've got LGHL, and then we've got HYLQ with Tony G. And then I guess there's also Nuve, which committed to putting part of its treasury into hype. It's kind of it's got a bunch of other tokens in it as well. I think people are underestimating the degree to which these DATs are actually sustainable long term. Like, if you're able to make revenue off the treasury from staking or from some sort of yield in DeFi or running a validator, like, I think people underestimate the degree to which they'll be sustainable. Like, as long as you have revenue coming in, I find it hard pressed to think that you'll have to sell those in the future. Right now, something could sour, like a team could sour with the foundation or just with the token in general, think the narrative's over and sell. And okay, like that's one way to naturally end one of these DATs. But I think otherwise they can persist for quite a while. Now that doesn't mean they're going to trade at a premium to NAV. A lot of these, probably all of them, will be at a discount to NAV eventually. But but I just don't think that has to mean that the game is up for these. If you don't have a lot of debt, if you've got a really great capital structure, you can stick around and just keep earning that 2 to 5 to 10%, whatever it is, on your treasury. In fact, right, a lot of these, some of these companies might be putting their hype into a HIP-3 market, into an LST or something, right? And if you can earn a lot more yield on that than otherwise, again, that's I think a pretty sustainable strategy. That being said, I mean, I think it's obvious that we're at the stage in the crypto treasury company meta where it's mostly about price impact. Like these SOL DATs recently, everyone was criticizing them for contributing all of the SOL in kind, which means there's not going to be any like market buying once it goes live. And why don't we like that? Well, because all we actually care about is that the price is going up as a result of these launches. And so what do? Now they switch to, I saw recently, I think a maximum of only 20% can be contributed in kind. The other 80% has to be contributed in cash. If you don't want to basically have to go through this extended shareholder approval. So this is like some SEC rule. And this is actually also the reason that Sonnet is taking so long to go live. Because I think they received like 2/3 of the hype in kind. And so because it's over that 20% threshold, it has to go through a shareholder vote. And so, yeah, I mean, that's kind of maybe the not so great part about this. Like if you're contributing like locked SOL or something in kind, I honestly have no problem with that. I think as long as you extend those lockups, right? Like you exchange your locked SOL for shares of this company. Personally, I think the same lockups should then carry over to the shares that you get. But otherwise, I really see no problem with that, right? If the company's not going to sell the SOL, they don't care about it being locked. It's just removing some natural hedger, or right, like if you've got this locked SOL, you're probably hedging it anyway, so it's taking some supply off the market. And I just think otherwise it just kind of hides it. We try to pretend that it's not about just the price impact, but it is really just about the short-term price impact. That's all everyone wants. They want it to pump tomorrow, and the locked SOL is not going to make it pump as much tomorrow. So
yeah, no, that's true. No, it's very true. And what's your expectation for the future airdrops for season 2 incentives? What's your expectations there?
Well, selfishly, I think as a lot of hype holders, we wouldn't be too mad about the entire rest of the allocation getting burned, right? Like I think that if that happens, hype probably goes up like 20 to 30% overnight. Probably more as it gets priced in, but I think there's like absolutely some like
more.
one time.
Probably more.
Yeah.
Probably way more.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of people who probably wouldn't be too upset about that. There's also kind of maybe this practical point, which is like, at this point, what does another airdrop do for Hyperliquid? Right, you've already got wide distribution. You've already got a ton of users. Does giving out the airdrop to a bunch of the same people on crypto Twitter who are just farming it like methodically, does that actually get you something? I don't know.
Yeah.
That being said, I think it's still more likely than not that there's another airdrop. Simply because, right, the point of a TGE, especially when you've got like a really like good aligned team, the point of a TGE is just to get your token distributed. You want as wide distribution as possible. You want a really fair distribution. And so I think an airdrop is a natural way to do that over time. But maybe the timing's not right? Like maybe you would rather wait until you're actually like bringing in new users from outside crypto, right? Maybe those are the ones where you can use a second airdrop most effectively. So I don't know. So my money would be on there will be another airdrop, but I would definitely not not very confident in a particular time or a way in which it'll be done. I think Jeff is going to think from first principles about what's the point of this, how can we best use it, and go from there.
No, 100%. And yeah, and you're absolutely right. I would love to see burn. Like that would be awesome. Actually, probably even better. Anyways, But so, and to go here to finalize here a little bit and to arrive to the latest last questions here. So for you in terms of the future, what's the biggest really technical advantage or challenge that you see with hyperwave today and going into the future? Like, do you think that can happen to be another product that can be better in the next year or two, or do you think that hyperliquid will like be a winner take all on everything that is doing, and the team is really going to really to the moon?
Yeah, I mean, I think probably the biggest shift that we see next is probably a majority of like volume on Hyperliquid coming from interfaces other than the main Hyperliquid front end. Right. So right now, most people just equate Hyperliquid with HL.xyz, Hyperliquid.xyz, the front end that everyone uses. That's the one where you can trade for zero fees. That's the one where automatically has all new listings. It's got the most functionality of any of these front ends. But everything on the front end is being served through the same API. So you could stand up the exact same front end. Anyone else could stand up the exact same front end. But I think what's going to happen is we're going to get like much more innovative with the particular interfaces we're using. And those are going to come from other teams, not from the Hyperliquid team.
Okay.
And in his last podcast, Jeff talked about this. They're basically staying super focused on just building the most performant blockchain. And they want other teams to take care of basically everything else. So I think there was some talk about, cross margin, right? And when is that going to come? Well, my take is probably actually that comes from someone in the ecosystem, basically building a feature to, use your BTC or Hype as collateral. And on the back end, it's just using a lending market like Felix or Hyperlend or Hyperfi. And then you're getting stables and they're going back into your perp account. And this is all happening kind of in one bundled transaction. And then you're trading on that. And probably Hyperliquid just integrates this same flow into the main front end, but it happens first on an alternative front end. And so I think that's a big trend that we're going to see. And yeah, I mean, using mobile apps, desktop apps. I do selfishly want there to continue to be some zero fee front end to use. Maybe some sort of open source product that, the community can contribute to. But, yeah. Otherwise, everyone's going to be getting their cut via builder codes. But yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And really last one will. So we just talked here before we started the podcast that today there was the new essay from Arthur Hayes that is very bullish on Hyperliquid, predicting about 100x on Hype specifically, and Maelstrom is buying pretty much every day Hype. So how do you see the price, and the price predictions in the next, let's say, 1 to 3 years, and what's your predictions for the next months?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'll just say it. I think obviously Arthur Hayes is full of stuff, and whatever, he'll make these price predictions, and everyone knows they're crazy. But you need someone like that, right? You need that.
Yeah.
But I do think it's also true that we really haven't seen any sort of euphoria on Hype, right? Like you've got a bunch of funds that are just trading this based on its cash flows, and that's a completely fine way to trade it. But this is crypto, and crypto loves to get caught up in euphoria, and we haven't seen any of that on Hyperliquid yet. So when euphoria happens, I mean, who knows where we go? You've got the assistance funds, taking supply off the market every day. At some point, basically, there's just no more supply left to buy at reasonable prices. But I think short term, like it's really natural to comp to stuff like Luna last cycle, which went to, I think, maybe close to 100 billion. You can comp to maybe stuff like Solana last cycle as well. Like I think these are just like natural, totally reasonable targets for where something like Hyperliquid could go this cycle. Beyond that, it's really hard to say. I'm especially really bad at correctly seeing the upside. I tend to use comps that are too like near term or like with recency bias and kind of like miss where stuff can go. But yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's more a question of just like if the metrics are up and to the right, if it's still a growth story, if there's still stuff that the team is building and that people are excited about in the future, then it's really hard to see the train stopping anytime soon.
Yeah, man. That's. I think that's it. So I have no more questions. So if you want to shill a little bit your Twitter, where people can find you, can find your thoughts, your ideas, your bullishness, please feel free, and we wrap it up next.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks for having me. And yeah, my Twitter is just at LukeCannon727. And I talk about Hyperliquid almost exclusively now. And yeah, would love to chat with people there over DMs or anything. Thank you, Joao, for having me. And I promise I will check out Hyperwave. I did check it out, but I haven't used it yet. So I do want to use it. Thanks for having me, and appreciate the opportunity.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Guys, stick together for a next episode and more episodes like this. Look, it was a big pleasure. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you, guys. Cheers.
GigaBrain is brought to you by Swell Labs. To find out more about Swell, go to swellnetwork.io and make sure to search for GigaBrain in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Hit the follow button so you don't miss any future episodes. Thanks for listening.